Welcome to our Picornavirus popcorn stand. As you can see, our popcorns are looking a little burnt, and this is to remind us that picornaviruses are a fecal oral virus. They're also RNA positive, that's why this scene takes place in the daytime, and they are naked viruses, so I made it very obvious that these are non-enveloped naked viruses. Now this section is pretty huge, so we'll just jump right in. So originally I had designed this so that the penguin and everybody behind him was actually in line to get into the naked museum. But as you can see, it didn't work out that way. But I did want that to be visually different because that section of the Picornavirus family is called Enteroviruses. And in the Enteroviruses, we have Polio, Coxsackie, Echovirus, and Enterovirus D68. So starting with our polio penguin, you can see he has a pair of crutches, and this is to remind us of the paralytic poliomyelitis that affected mostly developed countries. Now this was a fecal oral virus, like I mentioned, and it infected the tonsils and was released into the saliva where then spread to Peyer's patches. Now the two kids behind the penguin, they're supposed to all be penguins together. And the one with the eye patch is to remind us of these Peyer's patches in the intestines. And we'll get more to that later. So the virus can cross the brain-blood barrier, and this is kind of rare because 0.5 to 1% of everybody infected had this happen to them. And if the infection got into the CNS, it killed the motor neurons, and that's what caused paralysis. And it usually took 1 to 2 weeks after being infected. Now, the strange thing about this virus was that kids that got infected were less likely to get paralysis. And if you got infected and you were older, like post-puberty, you were more likely to get the paralysis. And that's why they said it affected developed countries more than underdeveloped, because in underdeveloped countries, the sanitation was bad and you were more likely to get it as a child. So polio came in 3 serotypes of the virus. So the same virus was 3 different surface antigens. Being immune to one didn't actually save you from being infected by any of the others. And at the time, this was like 100% infection that everybody came in contact with polio back in the day. And the vaccines invented were the Salk vaccine, and I represented it with like a sulking emo kid. And he has a skull and crossbones t-shirt, kind of like the kid from Toy Story, because this is a killed vaccine. He's also nursing a bandaged arm because it's an intramuscular injection. His little brother right behind him, that's a Sabin vaccine. And his t-shirt says Sabin Lives. So we can remember that the Sabin vaccine is a live attenuated virus. And it's actually taken orally. That's why he has a big old bubble gum. So you can think about it being in your mouth. And that gives us IgA and IgM immunity. And it infects the tonsils and Peyer's patches. And that's why he has the eye patch for the Peyer's patches. Right behind him is the Coxsackie family, and she has 2 twins, 2 toddlers. There is type A, and you can see that her boots and her hands, they match with little the pink polka dots, and that is to point out the hand, foot, and mouth disease. So that's where you're developing a spotted rash on the palms and soles of your feet. It's actually very painful. It can blister, and blisters develop around the mouth. And that's why I had her eating a lollipop as well that had polka dots on it. Her brother right next to her is representing Coxsackie B. And Coxsackie B with the heart around it reminds us that this causes myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart, and pericarditis, which is an inflammation of the sac around the heart. It also is associated with type 2 diabetes because it infects the beta cells in the pancreas and it kills them. That's why he dropped his lollipop, because he can't have sugar. And he's looking pretty sick. Next, right behind them is the Echovirus elk. He's wearing his red horns to remind us of meningitis. And his number 1 t-shirt is because this is the most common cause of non-bacterial CNS infections. He's also drinking a clear water bottle because this is going to remind us that to identify this virus, you need to take a spinal tap and you will find clear fluid. He's also drinking water because it's hot and it's summertime, and this is more of a summer-fall virus. The man sitting on the bench, falling asleep in the background, is Enterovirus D68. And I dressed him up as a worker for the entrance to the museum. So that's how I remember Enterovirus. He's also a summer fall virus. And you may not be able to see it, but he's supposed to have a little drool coming out of his mouth because he's taking such a good nap. And that's because this is also spread by saliva and droplets. He's asleep because this virus causes acute flaccid paralysis and myelitis. Also causes respiratory problems similar to the common cold. Okay, now let's go to the frontal line and we see the rhinovirus rhino. He accounts for 70% of the common cold, so he's the most common viral infection. There's over 100 different serotypes, and 90% of infections develop symptoms, which are just like upper respiratory asthma. And he's spread through contaminated hands and also droplets. That's why the baby rhino is sneezing. And the baby rhino's t-shirt says does not replicate at 37 degrees. And this is to remind us that it stays in the upper respiratory infection. Right behind him is our hepatitis hippo. She is hepatitis A, and A for acute infection of the liver. And you can see she has a liver tattoo on her arm. This is a fecal oral spread. It can be in food or in water. So shellfish is a common way to like pass the virus around. That's why our baby hippo has a little shrimp toy. And it's also very common in daycares. That's also why we have a very tiny baby hippo. The incubation is usually 4 weeks, and the virus sheds into the feces during the last 2 weeks of incubation. This lasts weeks to months, and children can be asymptomatic. Over 90% of children spread it, but they don't show any symptoms. And then if adult gets it, 25% are asymptomatic, and they can get more severe reactions. Okay, thank you for joining me on this Picornavirus family. Bye.